Welcome all attendees to Futureproofing U, the fair, the Global Executive Innovation Training Fair. Welcome. I'm a little bit smitten by the fact that there's so many smart people joining us today. This could be our smartest audience ever on any one of our webcasts. And we're really throwing out there the promise of 90 days to build a better future. We're going to cover off in 6 different pieces, different things that we've learned about the world of innovation, change, and growth. Some backdrop. We'll talk about a innovation course that we're just launching, and then we'll get into a question and answer session for, if not the back half, certainly the back third of our session. So as you go along and you have questions, please put them in the chat. We have a community catalyst here that is really looking forward to hearing from you, but we'll also be able to cover some of those things off at the end of our webcast. So this is a fair, much like when the circus comes into town. We have a lot of different treats for you today. Certainly, settle in. We've got the some digital Cracker Jacks. We got some innovation popcorn and maybe some change and growth hot dogs. And really, it's our kind of moment in time to go. We're about 6 weeks away from launching a training course. What are the things that we've learned that makes this so important? And if I pivot to the why are we here question, if we're really being honest with ourselves, kind of our change and innovation industry is broken. If you ask a CEO or an executive board today, how respected is innovation in your world? It won't be in last place, but it certainly won't be in the top half. I think the stats from a study that I've seen, 18th out of 23rd. So I don't consider that to be considered kind of elite level performance. Never mind the perception, certainly the market impact. More than 75% of innovators suggest they're not making the market impact that they're trying to achieve. But the challenge at the same time is change and innovation is so important. If you're not doing it, you're pretty much on the road to irrelevancy and perhaps non-sustainability. So we've spent the better part of the last 3 years pulling together stuff that we think is really important on the subject. We spend an ungodly amount of hours thinking about the subject, and we think we have a solution for this decade, which we'd love to share with you today. And certainly these are some of the materials that we've been using in our marketing for this webcast and the Futureproofing U. Every one of these things has merit to the left-hand side of the screen. Every one of these things had a decade where they were in vogue. We just think that we've minted and created something that's in vogue for this decade. And so hopefully you'll see why over the next 57 minutes. I'd love to introduce my fellow panelists and team joining us from the fairer gender, I suppose. Andrea Kates, she is a cross-industry revenue accelerator. She has been a CEO of companies throughout Silicon Valley, has dealt with lean startup intensively in terms of getting it to work inside a corporate landscape. And welcome, Andrea.
Great to be here.
Chenyang Xu, we're honored to be graced by a global technology venture leader of his ilk. He is the ex-technological venture head for Siemens. He has worked across so many different fields within Siemens and other places, manufacturing, healthcare, a number of different industries. And he has worked with literally hundreds of startups across the technology divide to see how they can actually work inside companies and build a better technological landscape. Welcome, Chenyang.
Great to be here.
And finally, we have our community catalyst, Revi Schlesinger. She is a transformation analyst. She has not only spent a lot of time trying to change companies, but also doing it with impact. And so certainly with purpose and impact. And on this segment, she is our community catalyst as well. So if you have questions, if you have any thoughts whatsoever in terms of either signing up for a course or whatever, Revi is our first line of defense. So Revi, welcome.
Glad to be here, you guys.
And I am going to just take down the present. Oh, maybe I can do this. I'm going to take it down just because I see my video isn't working. So one of the challenges of Zoom at times is.
Well, I'll go ahead and start with the concept of why we're here and what we'll cover. So first, we're starting to hear the introduction. And as Sean was saying, it's really important for all of us that we are in this fantastic group. We have a really large group of people from the future-proofing community, a lot of champions from around the world. We've got probably 7 continents covered so far, and people are still coming on. And so the question is, why are we doing this? And what is it that we wanted to do to kick off 2021? And so first, we wanted to talk about the fact that in looking at this community, we have been studying really hard what's keeping us up at night and also what to do about it. And so this is a practical look at some of the key issues that we need to cover. You've all been working day and night all through the pandemics, et cetera, to try to make things better. And we've been doing that plus, trying to figure out, is innovation really dead? We think actually long live innovation, but in a very different way. Superheroes and future proofing, you know, there's a gap and everybody talks about it, but we said, let's roll up our sleeves and cover it. And we'll share with you the insights that we've had during our year of living differently. Futureproofing U, at the end of this, we'll talk a little bit about a way that we're really hoping we can all start to learn and share together, because we're all about a learning community. And that's something that we've all been involved with in the past year and have some pretty novel ways of getting people involved in that. And we're also opening up the mics at the end for great Q&A. We also have Revi as our community catalyst fielding questions on chat. So please, if everyone would just take a second and let us know who you are and where you're from. And at the end, of course, there's a freebie. So we would love for you to stay to the end and take advantage of something we'd love to offer that you can bring back to the office and share right away, Monday morning, 8 o'clock. And so part of this is to pass this over now to Chenyang to talk a little bit about the reality check.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. So I've been doing the corporate innovation for a long time. And for those of you who have been in the trenches and either leading the innovation or making the innovation, we know in reality, it's actually nothing but easy. You know, it's really, really difficult and it's messy. I myself have a lot of battle scars, you know, and despite, you know, the company I work with is one of the most, you know, ranked as one of the most innovative company in the world. And so really it's challenging. And then the message we learned is you cannot go alone. There are a lot of different innovation methodologies. You know, if you look at it, it's actually solve a siloed problem, but it doesn't solve the whole problem, move the needle, especially if your company is large, you know, 50 billions, you know, $200 billion revenue, and that things become complex. So if we go to the next slide, and in fact, you know, what we have learned through years of practice together is, and also work with thousands of teams, is really innovation has to be taking a holistic approach, you know, end-to-end operating system approach, not just looking at siloed approach. You know, those work for small projects, but really try to move the needle for a large company, you know, create innovation that matters. You really take a holistic approach. So this is why I like, you know, like this 30, you know, these levers that we have researched and curated for you, and many of them are my favorites, you know, looking from the future, the process, the people, but my most favorite is the bottom on the routes to markets, on basically how do you innovate on the channel, you know, how do you do scalable innovation, you know, escape the, you know, really go above the escape velocity innovation to really deliver impact. So next slide.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of smart people on here today. And the question might be, well, why these people? Like, why not those other smart people in Silicon Valley or in Singapore or wherever? And I think I just teased out 4 of 48 numbers that we've kind of hooked our hat on in terms of why we think we're a little bit distinctive. We certainly have learned from 250 future-ready organizations. You know, over the last 4 years, we've conducted 25 foresight studies that you'll see some of the fruits of our efforts in here today. Certainly trying to get ahead of the future. We've tumbled and looked at 22 key distilled future readiness factors. And certainly, you know, we have this hope that over 90 days, we'll be able to turn you into amazing innovation superheroes as well. And so the net of it is today we're here giving you a sneak preview of what we think, humbly, as much as I can be as a Canadian, humbly the best in corporate innovation training. And so these are a set of 48 numbers for the, what is it, the left brain of you. You know, I oftentimes find numbers are really good proof points.
One of the things that's really important is that we feel your pain. And it's something where even about 10 years ago, the role of corporate innovator, and we were talking earlier, we were really lucky when I was CEO of a tech company in Silicon Valley, software company. We were lucky to look at 13,000 teams and figure out what it is that keeps them from getting across the finish line. And in those days, it was a lot easier because there weren't as many people who knew how to innovate. Today, there's so many more expectations, both from a perspective of corporate venture and the new realities that we've looked at. Were just accelerated last year with COVID. everybody had to get digital. Everybody had to become virtual like overnight. Everybody had to figure out retail in new ways and payments and transactions, and everything shifted. So what we realize is that we need to start doing things so much faster, or get busy changing, get busy dying. And so what we'd like to do now is to take the pulse of the group. And we would like to ask you to take a minute to answer these questions so that we can understand how to frame the rest of our presentation today. What really keeps you up at night? So which of these 9 realities of becoming a corporate innovator is most challenging for you? And you can answer more than one. So you can start to answer the poll, considering new workplace and the future of work, technology potential, cross-industry competition. We're not competing with our benchmarked usuals, the forces of globalization, the speed of change, customer demands and the pace, talent wars, bigger picture, purpose. Suddenly we're being asked to have our purpose come first, leadership pressures and style change, and all of the things around it. So we'll give you about another 30 seconds to weigh in. We didn't want to start on a downer because all of these things could make you feel like, gosh, I'm going to get off this webcast and get back to work. But thank you very much for answering. So we'd like to now share the results. And I would hope that, let's see if we can hopefully, does anybody want to make a bet on what was the highest? Sean, any thoughts?
I'm staring at it right now. I kind of got the advantage of the results, but it seems like speed and pace are a big challenge here.
I think probably that's true. And speed and pace, speed of change.
Also excited to see the focus on the purpose, bigger picture of purpose, and value.
That's the close second.
Great.
Yeah, close second. And
then new workplace plus the future work is also close third. These are the three biggest.
So what we love about this is, first of all, we get to know you a little bit, although at the end you'll get a chance to chat with us, and we actually learned how to convert you into chatting with us in person. But what's important about this is that these are all universals, and you'll see at the end we've kind of reversed engineered this so that everybody can have a sense of having their biggest issues addressed personally, as well as the fact that a lot of these are universals.
Okay, so one thing I was really surprised in 2009 when I became the head of Siemens Technology Venture in the Valley. There was a study back then. In those 5 years, the word of innovation, corporate innovation, in the annual shareholder report has skyrocketed, exponential growth. But if you're looking at the Google interest here, actually about from 2009 and forward, it's actually go flat. It's actually declining. And then now it's picking up a little bit. But another terminology, startup innovation, has grown tremendously. Now it's almost on par. Why is that? Because all the companies, particularly at the board level, in the last decade, has facing the challenge of the low return on their R&D investment, and nobody's really happy. And then so they're looking for solution. With the rise of being startup, many companies, particularly traditional company, they want to innovate faster to deal with speed of change. So introduce lean startup, right, as approach. It can solve problems like new product launch, some new business launch, but as a whole, it's not enough to solve the complex of corporate innovation. So despite the rise of the startup innovation, it's not the solution. This is from our observation. And so large company is not a big version of startup because it has so much more, right? You have many business units, you have a large ecosystem, you have your brand at the stake, right? And also you can afford to set up corporate venture and cultures to really make future bets, while small company cannot. So it's very important to be really aware of these differences and apply the right tools for the right corporate innovation problems. Otherwise, you will end up having failed innovations over again.
So we've got a little bit of a mantra here. It's like it may be for a lot of you who are career innovators, maybe a little bit salacious in terms of saying innovation is dead. We don't see it as dead at all. We just see it living in a much different space. We've looked at 6 things that uniquely you'll find within our Futureproofing U course that we're willing to discover and explore, and have done so over the last 3 years. One of my big kind of things that gets me all excited and at the same time frustrated when I see innovators out there is staying in their small little boxes of siloed innovation. And so we're inventing a new lexicon for innovation here. You know, it's no longer R&D, it's innovation plus plus, and looking at a much bigger gamut of different levers that you could pull. It's no longer innovation, it's future proofing, and looking at a ton of different considerations that should play into your role in terms of being a change agent inside your company. And it's no longer being in launch mode. I used to be working at Procter & Gamble, and we always used to have like this cadence of when we launched our products. Launch is every month, every week, and every day. And I think because of that, we've invented a new term called nexting, which is all about trying to get our ideas to market in a much more preferable way. We've even introduced a new ontology for innovation. We've seen a lot of 2x2 matrices out there. They may explain it simply for some people, but we think there's much more texture to this world that we live in. And so we've looked at six different types and 5 different levels of innovation. We think it's truly groundbreaking, and we're going to cover it in our course.
So we're lucky that we're living in its different age. I was looking at reruns of Mad Men the other day and thinking about in those days that what one was like great brand and slogans and making sure you had a good jingle. Why was that? Because a lot of the products were really similar and you had to figure out something cool and catchy to make sure that somebody bought your product versus another one that was pretty similar. But that world has really changed and I actually love it. I was lucky enough to work with a very large insurance company a few years ago that was trying to go direct, to digital. They were a traditional company that had agents. And I remember the actuary walking in, and I hope there aren't any actuaries in the room who will be offended by this, but they walked in when we were doing this innovation and we knew we had to go digital. And he said, I don't really belong in the room. I'm not innovative. I'm not one of those creatives. I don't come from Milan wearing a beret. I'm not that guy that has a lot of sticky notes. I'm not able to contribute to the innovation. Well, of course, the punchline is that the ability for everyone to contribute, whether it's a technology specialist, a logistics specialist, someone who specializes in ecosystem, different business models that I'll talk about in just a second. But it's actually not just the old-fashioned view of innovation that matters. It's the ability to see holistically an ecosystem and the different forces and dynamics. So for instance, you have to engage people, the customers, you have to understand the big picture and think differently and get rid of your anchoring biases, deal with logistics. That can be really sexy and have huge power, and technology and data. And so the ability to have business models, which we'll talk about now, is really important. And so we've codified, categorized, ranked, and looked at all of the top business models of the future. And we would love to work with you to see if A, we left anything out in terms of assets and structures, activities and partners, channels and monetization, customer segments and relationships. And what we're seeing is, just as the poll indicated, there are universal things, whether it's in fintech, everybody's a transaction and fintech company in some level now, perhaps, whether it's in healthcare. Do we all have to be aware of healthcare is part of the way to attract talent and take care of our people? Absolutely. And all of these business models are because of what you all were saying keeps you up at night, the changes in the market.
Yeah. So one thing, I'm, as a technologist, I have gone through research, R&D, product, the new business creation. One realization, we at Futureproofing U realize is, if you're looking at technology alone, it's really not as valuable as many technologists believe. You have to really take the technology and put it in the hands of the customers they can use as a product and services. And so be able to have technologists who also speak about business and venture is very critical. Or business people and venture people who understand the interface of technology is very, very important. And one of the actually just released study from IBM and actually see all the changing of C-suite titles, they actually found that the CTO title actually has rise up the most in the last decade. But I have worked with many CTOs who are running, billions of dollars businesses. I would say the one set of apart effective CTOs from those who are not effective is they actually are venture technologies. They can bridge the gap between technology and venture and really envision the future and articulate that for the company, either within or outside. So we just released 2 weeks ago the 2021 Emerging 30 Technologies and all the use cases that how each company can adopt some of them to drive the corporate growth.
Wonderful. We've also looked at what do the best companies do. I mentioned earlier we've looked at the top 250 companies. We actually tumbled through them and actually asked the question, what do they actually really do on the inside? And we've come up with an audit and the 18 key factors in terms of what makes them go. And so within this course, you'll learn how to, if you're either getting started or reigniting your company's activities, trying to use these 18 factors to be both measured, to look at what you're seeing and to act on what you might be seeing in terms of a measurement.
One of the things that's really important that I think is obvious is that we are not competing, as we said earlier, as benchmarked, let's look peer-to-peer, car company to car company. And I think that one of the things we've noticed most recently is that whatever you're looking at and paying attention to within your industry is probably not the full picture. So for instance, in travel, let's look at hotels, looking at hotels and kind of missing the boat when it came to Airbnb sneaking into the equation. And so we're all at that moment. We're all at Airbnb moments where if we're not able and skilled in looking from side to side in our peripheral vision at other industries, we'll miss the boat in terms of the opportunities in our own industries.
So there are many ways and many reasons how to get to the market, right? Technology innovation, no matter how exciting they are, if they only grow on the technology curve, on the performance, without getting to the market, it's not valuable. And so be able to figure out different routes to the market is critical. In fact, all the corporate are large and complex, and they have different markets, different customer segments, and be able to figure out the right routes for that is the key. And so here we actually looked at, rather than looking at 2x2 or 3x3, we really have to look at in terms of what are the change and innovation objectives? Is this incremental? Are you going for adjacency or you're going for breakthrough, right? And you have to use different tools for doing that. But also, are you going to work with the outside party, going to vertical chain integration to really completely own everything? And it depends on where you land on this, objective versus the company. Then you have different route to the market. And so we actually summarized and laid it out from many of the studies and the team we have worked with. And I think this could be a playbook for really driving innovation in this era of a great reset because of COVID.
So that's what we've covered uniquely. I mean, we've really explored it, spent a lot of time with it. And I guess we've captured this section as superheroes in future proofing. There's a gap that needs to be solved. We've looked at about 50 different schools of innovation and universities and different groups of people that actually train people in innovation. And not surprisingly, given the fact we're here today, we see there's a big gap and we'd like to actually stem it and plug it and do something about it. And so I'm not too sure if this is what our future first leader cohort looks like. This would be an enviable group of people here, but I think at the end of this 90 days that we're planning on presenting this course, my hope is together we'll feel like a group of people that can take on the world. Because I'll tell you, and I think I can speak for all of the people on our panel today too, it's tough. It can be a lonely job out there being a change leader. And so to have the support of people that are doing it in a different world and people that are learning it at the same time as you will be critically important. One of the things that we've looked at was, some of the leading. I mean, I went into it thinking, wow, this group of people will probably have a process that acts as an operating system that brings it all together. They didn't. And then I looked again and they didn't. And I've looked at about 30 different schools. And although they provide different pieces that make a lot of sense, they don't really bring it all under one roof. If you take our course, you may be numbed into hearing our term over and over again. It's how we've designed our 4 modules, but it's very simple. Sometimes, as Mark Twain said, it takes a long time to write a short note. See, learn, decide, commit. That's what we're all about. And I think that's what the 4 things that corporate innovation practitioners really need to look at deeply. And we've certainly explored it for the last 3 years very deeply in terms of going about it. So that was one gap that we saw.
The second gap that we saw is this notion of tribalized. And there are different ways of being intelligent, the same way that we were saying that there are different really core skills for contributing to innovation. And the way that we see those 6 types is talent and culture. So are we smart in terms of what some people call EQ, the ability to really have a sense of what it takes to drive and reinforce the culture? There's some people on the call today, on the webinar today, who introduced us to the term of making a workplace where you can really engender a culture of innovation. Microscope and intelligence in terms of company and strategy. The typical approach to strategy used to be very predictive analytics driven. And I was counting, it was about 75 projects in the last decade that were all around taking existing metrics and trying to figure out on a kind of linear scale, like where this might all lead. Well, it's a little too fast in this VUCA world to really depend on that type of intelligence. So we think that analytics are really important, data is really important, but there's a way of using it in a new way. The technology and operations, we're always going to be really screaming loud for the people that get no love in this world. The tech and operations people who, by the way, control a large percentage of what happens. There are lots of products that never make it to scale because they haven't figured out the logistics. And it's really, we think, sexy to be great at the intelligence of technology and operations. Customer and marketplace, a lot of people see, but as we said, we view it as a kaleidoscope. What is it that's unstated by our customers? How can we use customer discovery, co-creation, collaboration to uncover what we call emergence science, the ability to feel what's on the tip of the tongue of all of our customers that they might not even be able to state. We did a project in China in mobility that uncovered a lot of opportunities in that area just from understanding the kaleidoscope. Periscope is around this cross-industry that we've talked about in futures and trends. I mean, look, we're called future proofing. And what that means to us is that we believe that we have agency over our futures. It's not, oh my gosh, what do you think is going to happen next? And then you run away like Chicken Little being afraid the sky's going to fall. It's, wait a minute, we've got, as Ravi said earlier, purpose, values, direction, and priorities. And all of those mean that we have agency over our future. And I'd like to thank one of our customers for giving us that line. Thank you.
So the third problem we identified for in corporate innovation is you see a lot of books, training, they all focus on the front end innovation. How do you source innovation? How then you prioritize innovation? I would say from our observation, that's actually the easy problem. In fact, the harder problem is really the middle and back end innovation, which are the below the tip of iceberg, and that really need to be taped. And so we actually have this future proofing process. Is really to use this powerful see, learn, decide, commit, framework and provide you end-to-end innovation methodology, and so you can really take and apply quickly, not just focus on the front end, which will never get you fly, beyond the escape velocity.
I think it's funny. I looked at the top 3 strategic tools being used by the great world out there. So this, this was a study done with about 500 different people. The average age of those tools is about 50 years old. So you know what? It's funny. I showed my kids the other day a Palm Pilot. I loved my Palm Pilot. It was great. I was the best guy on the block 20 years ago. Like nobody could beat me technology-wise. I clearly don't think a Palm Pilot could saddle up to what I'm rocking right now. So I think to use that as a metaphor, we can't be using tools to solve old problems. We need to look at what are the things that we could invent that actually can help corporate innovators move to next. We have them, and we've got 18 different canvases that are not only in our book, but we share. They're colorful, they're interesting, and they hopefully take advantage of some of the mistakes myself, Andrea, Chenyang, Ravi have made in previous lives and mint something that really can help people get to next. We've also got 36 tools that can actually unlock some potential for you. And alongside that, we have a lot of different things that explore different marketplaces, different situations, and different verticals to give you a good lens of what is the full picture before we tell you and help coach you in terms of what the picture is for you.
As part of getting ready for this, we've spent a couple of years looking and talking with a lot of people. We've had a lot of webcasts. We've had a big community that we formed. And one of the things that we learned is, just like what we talked about intelligence, is there's a different expectation for leaders. Number one is that people expect us to have adaptive intelligence. And what that means is that whatever we knew 5 minutes ago isn't enough. Number two is that we have to be great at experimentation. And by the way, if you look at these 7 skills and think, oh my gosh, how do I do this? This is what people expect of us these days. So we have to be good at experimenting, at trying something and understanding through the data, whether it's validated or not, and coming up with great experiments that are scientific, but also creative. Purpose-driven, as you told us in the poll, it matters to be able to be clear with our purpose. It's how we get our customers on board. It's how we make a difference in the world. And it's actually how we drive our companies to new arenas. Communication. Yeah, we have to be great storytellers. We have to be prolific. We have to be able to do it all in terms of communication. And now we have to do it virtually. So good luck with that, keeping everybody engaged and involved in a virtual world. People empowerment. People are really changing as the new generations come into the workplace. And as we have cross generations and all kinds of diversity that we're looking for in our structures, we need to be able to let people bring their greatness to the table. So how do we do that? How can we be forward looking? We're trying so hard to keep our companies running today, and we don't want to be too far in the future of science fiction, but how can we start to understand ways to imagine new scenarios? And resilience. I mean, this is what's really been tested in the last 12 months, is how can we all as leaders take whatever comes toward us that we have no preparation for and deal with it in a positive way that moves the company forward, helps our customers do well and thrive, and bring purpose to tomorrow.
And I actually really talked earlier, right? Many of the company, particularly at the top, right, and they think this is technology is something you can delegate, to your CTO or your R&D organization, and this is a big mistake. And this is why you see companies who are technology adopters or experimenters versus the company that actually technology is the driver for the growth. I have worked with a number of division CEOs at Siemens. They're running about 10 billion euros business, and many of them, when they travel to the Silicon Valley or when I go to the Germany, the conversation is they are very, very curious. And in fact, immensely interesting what's going on the technology front and what's the implication for their future business, and then set up this, significant program to really go after that, and bets and funding. And so really this has to be embedded, not just seeing as one technology leader like CTO, but it has to be an entire C-suite and start from CEO owning that. It's very important. And this is why, I think, really innovation is not that, but we need innovation plus, which is, we don't need just technologies. We need venture technologies who are really, really masterful in traversing between technology and venture. And this is not just really having what you see under competence, which is the technology business, but a lot of soft skills underneath that is very important, from entrepreneurial, and comfortable with uncertainty. We talk about the early speed of change, but also have strong industry practice that fuse with the latest technology know-how, and then also have operational experience. So they not only see, okay, this is a shining new innovation, from the Silicon Valley or Israel or wherever it is, and headquarter or business unit implement. It doesn't happen that way, because you really have to understand the challenge on the operational side and to really be able to bridge the two worlds. And also be able to scale that networking and negotiate, partnership, investment with outside parties, because we're in a world of open innovation. The closed innovation will not get you far anymore. And also be able to communicate very succinctly and quickly about the complex, technology venture idea to get it off the ground. Be a great storyteller. It's very, very critical. And and then be able to build strong partnership. And again, you can run fast alone, but you don't get very far. So you need really a community of partners to really get you far and to win in the market. And final comment, when I started running the Siemens Technology Venture in Silicon Valley for the globe in 2009, one of the best things I did was I actually also co-founded a group called Innovation Executive Forum. So I was one of the founding co-chair. We started with 4 people who are the heads of innovations in the Valley for large corporate. And then in the last 12 years, we have 400 members. And these, I'm sure perhaps many of the attendee companies are represented in that group. And in those 12 years, we found innovation is actually the challenge is industry agnostic. And we never ran out of the topic, and we learned so much from each other. But one common thing is all the people, the leaders, they are venture technologists. They really, really can be able to translate technology into a venture, initiative and make forward-looking bets and to really help the company go forward. And that's really critical. And that's also how I hire my team of directors and innovators, in my tech ventures. And I'm really looking at not only technology business competence, but also these soft skills. It's very important. And also develop them and nurture them. People can learn. So this is where all of you can be a venture technologist if you take the time and learn.
Love it, Chenyang. We're going to invent venture technology as a term on Google that's just going to go viral over the next few years. So I'll be looking forward to that.
Sounds good.
We're about to do the big fireworks. Let's launch Futureproofing U. Let's infect you with the same enthusiasm we have. I thought I'd provide a little bit of context. We've covered off what's changed in the world. We've covered off how we're uniquely pursuing that same world across a number of different things. And we've covered off the gaps that we've seen in innovation training from other people and the fact that's led us to today. Not only is it training and also a book that goes along with that training, there are 12 other things that are part of this that we would like to consider what we're doing here in Futureproofing as a movement. And so you'll see things as you're in the course, we'll actually be launching them in real time. So the Futureproofing Awards is a great example of something coming up where we're going to recognize the top 16 different types of people that are doing future-proofing well in the world. And so you'll see that same level of intimacy in our course where you're getting case studies and different real life education on what's going on. So Andrea, with no further fanfare, I guess we'll cover off in the next 5 or 6 minutes what Futureproofing U is all about, and then we'll probably be pivoting to questions. So do you want a drum roll or?
No, I think I think that there'll be probably a train whistle in the background in just a minute. So we'll hear that. So some of the people in this community today are people that we've worked with over the years. We're really excited. I noticed there's somebody that I taught with at Princeton at the eLab on the call, someone that I worked with at Copenhagen Business School. Welcome, welcome. We have been trying really hard in working in China, in Japan with the CXO Forum, with Digital Business College in Silicon Valley, at Cisco. Thank you very much. My mentor from Cisco is there, who sponsored us as the innovators in residence for a year at Cisco. Thank you. It's great to see everybody. So Berkeley, Stanford, all of these places. And what can I say? There were flipped classrooms. There were all these experiments. There was online. At the end of the day, it's really important to make sure that it's about the people. And so we learned and also worked a lot with what we called cohorts in some of the first innovation initiatives for the US government and with university commercialization of technology. And it turns out that it's not the best ideas that win. It's not the best lectures and best Hollywood presentations. It's not the best camera angles on Zoom. But what really makes a difference is a learning community with people like Chenyang and Sean and Andrea and Revi, really working with you so that it's not just about the tools. You can read the tools in our book. We hope you do. But it's what happens when you bring in a trusted environment, the things that are really bothering you, the real world issues that you are really grappling with. And so the way that we've structured this is over a 90-day period. And I think of this because we're all trying to get in shape, right? So someone asked it about anchoring bias. If I have an anchoring bias, I'm going to do way more yoga than cardio. That's just the way it is. But with a great coaching team, and Sean and Chenyang and I are the coaching team that will be working with you, and Revi is our catalyst for the community. And we'll be working with you so that we do a couple of things, 8:30 to 12:30, 4 intense modules, half a day each. You come in and we have these great experiences. And we have been learning a lot about being able to jam online with whiteboards, being able to poll. It's all of us working together. There's short spurts of insight, and then a lot of roll up your sleeves and apply it directly to either your team, because we have team discounts. So you can bring a team of a few people from your business, or yourself in a group of other people who are peers, and we work it through. So you learn something, you get excited, you understand it, you apply it, and you get feedback. And we help you really think more broadly. And so the question is, how do you focus on the right aspect of this? Well, should you be in science fiction land, or should you be looking tomorrow? We help you figure out your Goldilocks sweet spot. Where is it that you need as a leader to put your innovation initiative so it can grow and so that it can stretch?
And just, I know there's a number of chat things. One of the failures of Zoom sometimes is to actually know everything that's going on. I know Revi's been monitoring it throughout, and I think within the next 2 minutes, we'll just open it up for a free-for-all. People have asked me, it's like, what does it look like? Well, this is what it looks like. There's 4 modules that we're going to cover off. It's going to be over the course of 13 different weeks, which I think, given my simple math, ends up being close to 90 days. And it has a 3-beat cadence where there's an interactive class, there's a video reinforcement, and there's a coaching peer support session. And these are the 4 modules. See, learn, decide, commit are the 4. They're the 4 constructs for what we want to do overall. And I think C is the front end, learn is kind of the front middle end of innovation. Decide is kind of trying to decide and actually get your stuff out to market. And commit is focused a little bit on how do we scale these new ventures that make it out, but also how do we sustain them by creating cultures of innovation and creating some sustainable practices that are repeatable over time. So Andrea?
This is what it looks like.
Maybe a quick comment here.
Oh, sure.
I want to jump in. I think one thing that's very important, differentiate this from a lecture mode or reading a book. Is really everybody starts their innovation journey from different starting point. And this is why this coaching session is very important, and we take a team approach. And so this is a very salient feature we build in. We think will make a big difference so that you can really apply. The second thing is very important, and we designed this innovation cohort over 90 days, not just a week intensive training, like typical EMBA. Part of the reason is that it takes time, take practice. So we'll be with you on this journey. You can take your innovation, a mini project to get started, no matter where you are, and then we can coach you. So then you can get the best of that. And then besides, you get to see the peers across different industries, not just from your company, because there's always company bias. And I think these are the 2 salient features that will set us apart from different type of training. And then we believe you get a lot out of that and become the superheroes of innovation, as John showed. So.
Yeah, I can't add much to that. I think the goal is here that it's, we've been through the flipped classroom where there's kind of like a little bit of content and a lot goes on in the room. This is actually a plus on that. We have crystallized the knowledge. So when we get together, we're having fun, we're working the concepts, we're doing work, and we're giving you tons of feedback. And then in the weeks in between our half-day sessions, you get to work with Sean, Chenyang, Andrea, Revi. You work with us so that we have you come in small groups. If you're here with a group of people from your company, we'll custom so that you can bring your team to one of our sessions. And you really get a chance to take each of these tools and advance it with a lot of personalized feedback, conversation. And someone asked the question about anchoring bias. The way that you get rid of anchoring bias is to have people like us questioning, helping you see it bigger and different. And so Sean, do you want to talk about Futureproofing U, the sort of summary?
I think, yeah, I know the chat's been pretty hot. I think I'll just pivot over to Revi right now to actually take us into our Q&A session and maybe just really top line about what's going on to this next session.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the whole program. I'm excited to be your community manager. We do have an early bird special going on now, so really want to give you guys an opportunity to take advantage of that. I'm going to summarize. The program is very it's packed with a lot of details, but it's also has very succinct opportunities to really coalesce the information and put it into use in your organization. There are 4 interactive live workshops on Zoom. with with Andrea and Sean and Chenyang and other faculty. There'll be 2 interactive custom coaching peer support workshops, which will be actual Zoom meetings where you'll work with your cohort and think about how this applies to your organization, the work that you're going to bring to the program to work on. There are regular reinforcement exercises. You'll have unlimited access to our online learning platform, an opportunity to work with other leaders like yourself in innovation to use the materials presented in the course in a hands-on, tangible way with your organization to solve your own problems. You'll have access to all the recordings, and you'll get a personal copy, a preprint copy of the book, Futureproofing Next, The Future Beyond Innovation, which has basically is a compendium of all these tools, which really, bring the methodologies that have been used over the years and bring a fresh look to them, a fresh approach that really makes them applicable for today to deal with the changes that we really need to make in our world. So if you need more help on deciding if this course is right for you, we are doing regular focus calls. I'm going to put a link in the chat that you can use, and we're happy to set up a direct focus call with you for 20 minutes. You can also invite your team and grab the link now. I just put it in the chat. We're also going to be sending out an email right after this course with all the links that you need so you can reach us. You can also reply right back to our emails. You can also feel free to mention right now in the chat if you want us to reach out to you. We'd be happy to call you back. And if you're ready to enroll now, again, there is this early bird special and we have a limited number of spots. And we also, I'm going to put the registration link in the chat right now as well. And we have a team rate, a corporate team rate for companies who are sending 3 or more individuals, which is a great opportunity to work with your team and align around a single approach and methodology that you can work together on in a hands-on way to implement your change initiatives in your company. Also, the way the payment is structured, just so you know, each person in your team can register individually and pay through their individual corporate credit card. We're going to be hosting some additional events in the coming weeks. You can bring your team members to help understand the tools and learn more about our approach and the presenters, the faculty who will be delivering in the course. And whether you're in HR or manage a venture portfolio, we really think there's a lot this program can offer. And we're happy to work with you individually to really think about how it would work for your specific needs in your organization. So we're going to shift. I'm just going to put also emails in the chat so you have everything handy. We're eager to hear your thoughts and questions. We're going to use the last 10-12 minutes of the call to do Q&A. So feel free to put up your questions right now. We've had a first question we're excited to respond to, and I want to put it out to the group, which is, how will the Futureproofing U be different for those coming on their own versus those who are coming as part of a corporate team? And after that, we'll open up to the broader group. I don't know, Andrea, if you can, are you going to bring?
I'll grab that. Yeah,
okay.
I'll grab that. And also, if people want to, there's a new thing on Zoom where you can tell us and we'll let you see us and join us like the Brady Bunch. So let us know and we can convert you from being just a name to being on our screen and chatting with us at the end. We'd love to see you. There's some great old friends in the community. So the question is, if it's a team versus an individual, there are people who learn best on their own, but most people learn this material best in concert with others. And it gets back to this idea of what we're trying to do, which is stretch our thinking. So if you're not in a team from your company, we'll put you in a group, not only in the breakouts, but also in these interactive sessions where you get a chance to roll up your sleeves with other people and throw some things out. Of course, if it's proprietary, you can anonymize it, if you have, special IP that you don't want to reveal. But you get great feedback from fantastic people, and we're super excited about the global community. And then finally, even if you are with a team from your company, the same thing, you can choose to be cross-industry matched so that you might sit down with Chenyang and a company from Singapore and a group from Bogota and sit down and talk about what's the future of fintech. You know, what does the future of work look like? You might sit down with Sean in a session and really talk about what are these emerging trends? What are the ways that COVID's changed the workplace forever? So it's very social, it's very interactive, and we think it's going to be a ton of fun.
So we have another question that came up in the chat, which is how future proofing can help get rid of anchoring biases, or how do we address that?
I'll take the first one. I'll have any of you, the other guys, jump in. I know we address it directly. We've actually codified kind of what are the 30 biggest anchoring biases. I think you're right. There's, as practitioners, we all understand this is a very human practice here. And so we look at different strategies, and I hate to even say it, but it's quite tactical in terms of dealing with human beings. You'd love to say there's one strategy fits all, but you know, what's behind some of the bias oftentimes is the most interesting part of getting to next. And so if you can try to dissect based on, you know, it's funny, we were talking about Dunning-Kruger effect the other day. That's one of our 30 where it's just, you know, it's usually the person that is the least able in the room is the loudest and most convinced of their position, right? And so what do you do with a person like that? And so we explore a little bit about that and some of the other 29 biases, but A, significant consideration. B, we've thought about it. C, we've got some tactics, but D, I think all of us learn together in a peer learning environment might be able to produce something even better.
Great. There was another question about portfolio management and how the Futureproofing U tools address portfolio management.
I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Chenyang. So we've spent the last 4 or 5 years tackling something really hard. It started off with the question of where do you place your bets? So I'm sure all of us have been judges on hackathons. And, you know, at the end of a hackathon, there's so many great ideas. You could probably give the money to one of any number of teams. And at the end of that era, we realized that it wasn't just the team. We actually had to think about how that individual concept would marry with the organization's priorities. And so we started to do what we call triage, which is, you know, at the end of, there was a big design thinking session that yielded 500 fantastic ideas that all got a 10 out of 10. And then they said, well, now what do we do? Which one do we pick? Well, you know, that is a good problem to have, but we tackled it because it turns out that if you can't make choices or if you can't get people aligned, you might as well have, you know, just, you know, equal ideas. And so what we have is a process for you to use with us and to learn it and with your teams that provides triage. How do you decide what your priorities are? How do you match those to your future state? How do you have both the quantitative aspects to it so that you can figure out the economic models, as well as the risk factors that you should factor in? And what does it take to have innovation metrics factored in so that it's not just ROI as your only metric? So let me turn it over to Chenyang because we take this really seriously.
Yeah, and you know, in addition to what Andrea said, you know, this framework of future proofing really helps you to, you know, see and learn and decide and then commit in terms of the portfolio design and what kind of growth you want. One other thing really set apart is we're focusing on really addressing the nuts and bolts, the dirty part of the portfolio management, because a lot of corporate are really looking at, for example, either you do something so-called, okay, we can do incremental or radical and you know, disruptive, or you just call sustaining and transformative. However you segment your portfolio, you know, and then they put 80%, you know, 15% and 5%. We actually found out the biggest loss of innovation in terms of growth is actually they tend to run silos, right? They don't communicate with each other. There's a lot of friction loss because any disruptive innovation, you know, need to become a sustaining innovation once they scale up. If they don't turn into sustaining innovation, and you know, they're not going to make a big impact, right? You know, think about iPhone in Apple. It was a disruptive innovation at the beginning, but now become a sustaining innovation. It's the biggest cash cow of the company. That change is very important. It requires a different team to do it. So that's why designing your portfolio, be able to understand it's not just a collection of silos. but they actually have to work together dynamically over the course of innovation to achieve the corporate innovation objective, and growth objective is the key. And so those things we're going to talk about it, and we'll actually coach you and really work with you on each of your cases.
That's a great segue into the next question, which is, it was a question about executive sponsorship and how critical that is, and whether the program addresses that.
I know we have a full different module in session 1 about getting started, and in some cases it could be about getting reignited again. By and large, in what we've seen in the 250 companies we've looked at, in 98% of the companies, Revi and whoever asked the question, if you don't have executive sponsor commitment, doesn't matter how great the idea is, it will probably fall on deaf ears. Maybe not so in startup land. This is where startups, if you're discontent, great, start a startup and actually make it happen. In corporate land, if you don't have some executive support to actually broadcast your ideas further, you just get into some challenges in terms of not only scaling the venture itself, scaling the idea so people buy into it. And so we cover that off. I know it's within our first 2 tools that there is sign off, like before you start a project, you should be pursuing executive sponsor and commitment before formalizing it, just so it doesn't become this rogue thing that creates a lot of chaos but doesn't create a lot of value.
Andrea, do you want to speak any more to that? One of the things that
that's
excites me about too is the focus on change readiness in the tools as well, which it really takes a much more integrated approach than most innovation approaches that have been used to date.
One thing maybe I see on the chat, Andrea answered about, this is actually, we're combining a lot of past experience and put together, and this is our first cohort. But all of us have basically run, hundreds or even thousands of teams before. And I think we are putting together, we call this, the best of the past learnings, and to give this new cohort, and then to really supercharge the innovation learning and the journey.
So we're going to wrap up now. Thank you again for coming today. Please look out for our next emails with links, and the links in the chat. We hope to see you on March 26th. And if anyone wants to stay on, we'll probably hang out a little bit longer and we can pull you into direct communication. Otherwise, have a great day.
Have a great day. Nice to have you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.